the spotlight. I hope you had fun seeing everybody. Welcome to our Fireside Chat with Chip Conley and Dacher Keltner. We are so fired up. We had like 1,300 of you sign up for this thing today. So welcome. Tell me, where are you in the world? Please, in the chat. It's one of our favorite rituals. Where are you in the world? And let us know if this is your first time coming to one of our fireside chats. Welcome. Look at our geographical waterfall flowing here. Newbies, first time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is not a boring webinar, I assure you. We have music, we have dance parties, we have lots and lots of fun. I see New Zealand is here, I see the US is here, Canada's here, all over the place. Welcome. So this is your opportunity to meet some of our guest faculty, spend time live with Chip Conley. Also, it's a chance to ask questions live on camera with us. So about halfway through this program, we're going to open it up for questions. And you don't just have to put it in the chat. You can actually raise your hand and come on up with Dacher and Chip. So Chip will let you know when that's going to happen. And speaking of which, from Florida at the moment, Chip Conley, hello.
I am in a hotel room in downtown Miami. What? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to here's my quick story. I'm giving a bunch of speeches to YPO, Young Presidents Organizations groups here. So 6 chapters hired me over the course of 3.5 days to give talks. So I flew into Palm Beach, which is where my first group was. And the very first thing I saw when I get into the airport and the plane is going to the terminal is a big, huge plane with 5 letters on it, TRUMP. So whether you're a Trump supporter or not, we love you. All I can say is the moment I arrived in Florida, I knew I was in Trump land. So,
we need a new plane that says CHIP.
No, don't need that.
Let's bring Dacher up here in a moment whenever you're ready, Chip. I'm excited for today. And this has been such a such a big topic within MEA. It's a topic that universally is adored by our alumni, as are you, Dacher. And it's a topic we're always asked about over and over again because it's just so easy to understand and apply. So I'm excited for the two of you to kind of take a conversation to the next level. And I'm going to get off stage and let you get to it.
Thank you. First of all, Carrie, love you. And, these events would not be the same without you. And Dacher, you know what? We've talked with the MEA community before, but I don't know if we've ever actually gone back and looked at your history of who you are, how you came up with this weird old name that you have.
Yeah.
And how did you become the person you are today, especially with the desire to cultivate awe and to help spread the idea that awe is very healing?
Yeah.
What was it along the way in your early adulthood or early and childhood? Because you lived in a variety of places. What was it that led to this?
Yeah. Thank you, Chip. And I always feel brotherhood when I'm with Chip. And we have a very interesting and deep connection. So thank you, Chip. It's good to be with you. Truly, I feel my vagus nerve firing to be with Chip. And it's interesting, Chip. I am working on this book, and out of the narrative literature, one of the things that I'm doing for a chapter is to encourage my editor, who wants me to be more personal, is to write a life story of awe and moral beauty. And in fact, at my next MIA gathering, we're going to do that. And it's really powerful just to go way back in time and think about.
That gathering is next month, if I'm not mistaken, December 16th through the 21st.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. For one of these reasons, stories of awe are so powerful. And what I started to uncover in this period of my life, my parents are getting older, reflecting on life, is early in childhood, I was meant to do this work. My parents were counterculture. I yeah, born in Mexico in a small one room clinic, moved to Laurel Canyon in the late 60s and all of that, the doors at the store I'd get my Snickers bar at and my mom taught literature and romanticism. My dad was a painter and loved Goya, Francis Bacon. I was all awe, and I was lucky in that my parents, for all the craziness, they couldn't fill out paperwork to save their lives, but they raised my brother and me in a life of awe, a spirit of awe, just getting out into the woods and going to festivals and looking at art when I was a kid, in museums. So awe was in me. And then the interesting thing was my parents were in the humanities, but I wasn't good at art and I wasn't very good at fiction, and writing took a long time for me to figure out. But I was very good at math and science, and I've always, and in fact, and I was just down at the La Brea Tar Pits in LA where they're bringing me in to help out with their exhibit. I was awestruck. My dad tried to take me to the LA County Museum to see visual art. And when I saw the woolly mammoths and the saber-toothed tigers, I was just like, I was 5. I was like, oh my God, evolution time, So I was raised in this countercultural spirit of awe that Mia is the next version of. And Chip, you did this with Esselin and Mia and just like, let's open up people's spirits. And then I just happened to be a scientist and was always good at science. And so I started to study awe scientifically. And then I think that, just the final point is like giving stuff away like you do with Mia and you've always done in your life. My parents were activists and they volunteer in prisons and they look out for the underdogs and they try to give away ideas. My mom ran a local newspaper. And so for me, it was like, wow, that's what knowledge is for, is progress. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
So what I'm hearing is that you could notice things, and it feels like
Yeah.
awe requires an ability to take the blinders off and have
Oh
the
my God.
space to notice. You also, one of my favorite books of yours is Born to Be Good. So even
Thank
before
you.
we get to awe,
Yeah.
take us through your
Yeah.
process of education, and for someone who's a math science guy,
Yeah.
how did you get into
Yeah.
being an academic, creating the
Yep.
Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley,
Yeah.
and then writing books even before awe on maybe understanding the awe of humans? And interestingly enough, we will get to the top 8 list, but the top 2 are pro-social.
Yep.
But tell us a little bit about the background of
Yeah.
how you got to studying the positives of human nature.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to be a teacher. My mom's a teacher, my brother's a teacher, my grandmother, and I am a teacher. But I was good at research. And so after Santa Barbara, I went to grad school at your alma mater at Stanford. And at the time, in the mid 80s, Stanford was the mecca of the cognitive revolution, that minds are computers and we have these algorithms and they spit out how we perceive the world. And there was no discussion of emotion, truly. Even though Darwin wrote about emotion, all the great philosophers, emotion is the mind, right? We weren't making progress scientifically. And then as a postdoc, I went and listened to this talk by Paul Ekman, who pioneered the study of the face. I was blown off the map. I was like, wow, we can code all the muscle movements of the face and know partially what you're feeling. And this is what my dad had me look at paintings when I was a little kid and just like look at the faces and think about emotion. My mom was quoting D.H. Lawrence and William Blake, and I was just filled with emotion. And suddenly here was a science to go do it. And I didn't know where it would take me in my career, but I learned I've done hundreds of papers on the face and the voice and the physiology of emotion. And at that time, Chip, I was reading the field of emotion, and it was biased by Freud and fight or flight. Everything's fight or flight. And then if you're feeling good, that's a defense mechanism and you're hiding from it's like, what? And I was like, and then you go to economic theory and it's like, it's all self-interest and kindness is an illusion, or it's all for selfish reasons. And I was like, that doesn't align with my experience of compassion for kids who are really poor in the rural school I went to, and awe at at a concert as a teenager, and beauty. And so we just started to do the science to your point of like around 2000, positive psychology was turning to the emotions thanks to Barb Fredrickson at North Carolina. And I was like, man, I got the tools to show we've evolved to be kind, born to be good, that gratitude is an ancient language you can see in primates, that awe, as people will learn at my workshop at MIA, awe, as Jane Goodall says, is found in chimpanzees. They have reverence for nature. And as Jane said, why wouldn't they feel awe, which is really the beginnings of spirituality, or being amazed at things outside of yourself? And so you're putting your finger on the spirit of my work, which is like, this fight or flight self-interest model of human nature is wrong. It's only 50% of the story. And then my work has really been about all the pro-social stuff: vagus nerve, oxytocin, compassion, gratitude, love, and all. And I think the field, we're now in a really different place thinking about who we are. And what I love about Mia and the workshop is you get a week to just like activate all of that stuff that is in there very intuitively.
Wow. Yeah. So what's great about an MEA workshop is that people by the end of the workshop feel full of love, full of collective effervescence, moral beauty,
Yeah,
and a few other things
yeah,
we'll talk about. But in a week when you're leading it, even more so accentuated. But before we go to just diving a little deeper onto awe, so help us understand in the time we're living in without
yeah,
necessarily dragging ourselves through the mud of politics too much. It feels like we're in a very divisive time where it's not born to be good, it's born to
yeah,
be divisive, born to be mean, born to be, you know, you know, just I don't
yeah,
know, nasty. What's going on? And this is obviously this is way beyond my
yeah,
pay and maybe yours too, but
yeah,
how do you have some hope that in a time when people seem to be so apt to go straight to judgment,
yeah.
um, that we're going to somehow veer back to an era where we see the best in each other?
Yeah, what a challenging question. And I love your observation. Like, it's probably a historian or a sociologist that would take stock of like, wow, look at the 40 years we've been through from like Reagan to the present moment. And for me, and you and I've talked about this a lot, Chip, like one of the fundamental sources of awe is moral beauty. And we are wired into our brains, a very specific part of the brain, the medial prefrontal cortex. When I see someone be kind or courageous, I start crying. I feel empowered. I want to do good for the world. I do good for the world, moral beauty. But regrettably, for interesting reasons, I'll just cite a couple. We're in this period of moral ugliness, especially in the United States. And the data are clear. Like, we are a more cynical culture. We distrust other people. We're a more distrusting culture, which costs us economically. And there's a discourse. We are the most polarized culture potentially in the world. And polarization is really centered upon how much we hate people who are different from us. It's not that we love our group. It's that, oh, those Trump supporters, I come up with all these stories about them. It's a morally ugly time. And I think, we all have our sources, the digital media. There's a lot of, I'd recommend our audience read The Black Pill, a new book out on how much ugliness is on 4chan and 8chan and X, and it traffics in it. I think we've broken down our abilities to share. We don't share music like we used to, or we don't go to movies together like we used to. We don't share prayer. We don't, and that's coming back, but so that breaks down our chances to share moral beauty. So it's a deep problem, but I have a lot of hope. Uh, we have made a lot of progress in life expectancy and rights and women in power and people of diverse backgrounds that come out of this sort of open spirit. And we gotta, I think the next 4 years are gonna be a real fight on just resurrecting what's good about people.
And would you say that one of the ways we can combat it is to just try to be the change ourselves, like as Gandhi would say? That's one of the most fundamental ways we can try to shift the dynamic, because our emotions are contagious, right? I mean, so if we show up with anxiety or anger, the room can feel it. Whereas if we show up with one of a kindness,
Yeah.
you know, people are apt to emulate us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have to, one of the really interesting things about probably a MIA community or the community of Berkeley scholars that I teach is we let go of ideas of like the virtuous path and the kind path and the things that all cultures have been emphasizing. And I think that's part of the reason, frankly, Democrats have been adrift, is we've lost our emotional moral core. And so in this era of, Instagram and X and the hatred online, which is pretty robust, we've got to make this a contemplative practice of really making sure we practice kind speech and making sure instead of polarizing, we think about the humanity of somebody. I was in Colorado, hopped into, and this is before my haircut, and I had this long hair. I look like a California, I am. And I hopped into this elevator, and there's this guy, and he was a buzz cut guy. And I was like, oh, here's a Trump supporter. The election had just happened. And I was like, "Arr." And then I was like, okay, I just like, how are you doing, man? And it turned out he had gout. He was in chronic pain. All of this compassion rushed forward. I'm like, I don't care what he voted for. He's a human, So I think it's going to be an ethical challenge to move from, there's research on cynicism. Other people are out to screw me, right? That shows it's bad for your health. It's bad for your work life. It closes down your mind. It's bad for your neighbors, right? So we got to move out of that to a Buddhist mindset or a secular ethical mindset, a Mia mindset that's oriented out of kindness. So it's serious stuff, man. We're in a crisis,
So tell people a little about the Greater Good Science Center, why you
Yeah,
started it, and
yeah,
what its purpose is.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so the Greater Good Science Center, and I bet some of you have checked it out, greatergood.berkeley.edu. The idea of the Greater Good Science Center is to largely journalistically report on all the new science of well-being, gratitude and compassion and mindfulness and awe and empathy, bridging differences and aesthetic emotion and savoring, etc. Just all of that really wonderful essays for free. Then we started to think about giving away practices. And so we have Greater Good in Action. And so, I was just teaching 100 leaders at Kaiser Permanente yesterday, all these, breathe, like we'll do it, our workshop with you, my workshop with you, savoring awe, telling awe stories, reflecting on a childhood experience of awe, absorbing awe out in nature, so abundant in Baja. How can I sustain that? And so, Greater Good in Action has a bunch of practices, scientific literature behind them. 700,000 people go to them to try them, right? I have a podcast with a bunch of, just to talk about new advances in the science. So it's really about, giving this knowledge away in actionable forms. So when we reach out teachers and educators, I feel like it's done a little bit of good in the world. And what we did, it's just like, it's like Mia, right? It's 20 years ago, I had this choice, like, could I take some donors' money and do a conference and some white papers, or can I create a journalistic entity and get it to the world? And to me, that seemed obvious,
Hmm.
and to educate as Mia does.
So your book, Awe, came out almost 2 years ago. Has sold very well, gotten a lot of attention, continues to get press.
Yeah,
In our MEA community, it's sort of one of the maybe top 5 books that we recommend.
thank you.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what you learned when you did this research, and maybe even take us through the 8 pathways, most common pathways to awe globally.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I talked a lot about, I still remember days early in Mia being with you and talking about awe and workshops and the book, and you got me to collective effervescence. And so you've been there since the start, and it's been a very important part of the experience for me. So I had done 15 years of science on awe, of nervous system and expression, different cultures and so forth, how it benefits us health-wise. And I learned a few things that I didn't expect scientifically. One is awe is all around us. And it's just like you said earlier, like we just have to remind ourselves, pause, look at things around us. Einstein felt it was a basic state of consciousness. What an interesting idea that our mind has all these layers to it, and we're trying to understand reality and what we're doing during the day, but awe is always right there. And you can just clear away, biases and so forth. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. It's amazing to talk to Chip. So awe is always around us. And I call that everyday awe. Secondly is, this one, I talk to thousands of medical doctors and school teachers and all the time. And I'm like, there's almost nothing better for you than getting some awe, and a few minutes of awe a day, which I do every day. It's good for your inflammation, your vagus nerve, your heart, your brain function, your ethical behavior, how you treat the environment, your mind, your reasoning. And I'll talk about that in the workshop. It's astounding that just a couple of minutes a day, we had doctors during the pandemic find a minute of awe a day as an intervention, and their depression dropped for 21 days, right? And we had veterans go rafting for half a day, awe, 32% drop in PTSD over the course of a week. 32% drop in PTSD. It's like, good luck, man. Who could beat that? So awe's around us, and it's so good for you. And then, I learned, the 8 wonders are where we find awe: moral beauty, the kindness of people; collective movement, or as you got me to dig into, collective effervescence, dancing and movement and cooking and protesting and cheering at a game; spirituality, music, visual design, nature, very obviously, and then a couple of interesting ones. Big ideas. Chip, what's your favorite big idea?
MEA. I think my favorite big idea is how generosity is a selfish act
Yeah,
in a very positive way.
yeah. That your nervous system is flooded with dopamine, and and then the last one is the life cycle, which is life, birth, life, death, the cycle of life, which is the fundamental law of life, is cyclical. And then what I learned, which is really interesting, and I'm still learning, is our world is hungry for awe. I am being pulled into all kinds of conversations to like help us bring awe back into palliative care or into museums or schools. And I learned to be open to spirituality, frankly. I wrote the book while my brother was passing away and had died. Talked very explicitly about that with you, Chip, at a beta moment in Mia, and followed that experience of grief through the book, profound grief, and I became open to more mystical dimensions to our world, which was interesting.
Hmm. And do you notice? So number one and number two on the list were a bit of a surprise for
Yeah,
a lot of us, because nature I think was number three on the list
yeah.
maybe, and that's the one that if you talk to 1,000 people and say like
So-
what's the fastest way to feel some awe, it's nature. But in spirituality, I don't remember where it was on the list, but that was
yeah,
somewhere as you listed it. But moral beauty and collective effervescence, what an interesting thing that something that's in the academic world called pro-social
yeah.
uh, has is the most common pathway to awe globally. Is
It's
that true across cultures? And just tell us a little bit more about both of those.
it's profound, and thank you for your careful reading. We we got stories of awe, and people learn about these in the workshop from 26 countries. You know, India, Mexico, Japan, Poland, New Zealand, US, Brazil, Chile. I mean, really different cultures. And the most common source of awe was how we are inspired by other people's kindness and courage and humility and overcoming, you know. Stories of, from Ireland, a mom watching her daughter dance ballet and she had been born with club feet. A story from Pittsburgh of a son who came into his dad's bar with a African American, and his dad's the bartender, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1973. And this customer in the bar says, "How can you let your son hang around with an N-word?" Right? This is 1973, and the dad throws the guy out of the bar, and the son is just like, "Wow, moral beauty." And it's back to your observation about, kindness is so important in our evolution, that not only are we wired to be kind, which was born to be good, my first book, but we have this overwhelming response to other people's kindness and courage. You can show people, and we'll do this in the workshop, you start telling stories of moral beauty, and people will start crying. They'll get goosebumps. They'll feel like they're reset in their world. They're transformed. I was teaching medical doctors. I'm joking up thinking about this yesterday. And this woman said, "Oh, I got a story of moral beauty. I was helping this family. The mom was terminally ill. She died one day. The doctor was weeping, right? Overwhelmed, as doctors often are. She feels a little hand on her back, and it's the mom's daughter who's 10 years old. And she says, Dr. Smith, like, it's okay to cry, but don't worry, mom's in a good place and we're okay. And here's this 10-year-old showing such kindness and courage. So it still astounds me that we have this capacity, just to sort of notice the kindness out there in the world, the humanism, and just feel like I got to do better in the world. I got to figure out what my life is about and give to the world.
Would love fall under moral beauty? How
Yeah,
where
yeah. And this is, in the emotion world that I'm part of, we isolate these emotions: compassion, gratitude, love, awe, amusement, beauty, and then we look at them separately, and there are good reasons to do that. And then love activates moral beauty.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of moral beauty when we love people for a long time. We admire them, in very special ways. So yes, it's very much intertwined with awe, much like gratitude and compassion are. They're very close to the feelings of awe, and then more specifically, moral beauty.
we're gonna thank you, thank you. I'm gonna move on from collective effervescence, other than to say that my experience of collective effervescence is when a person's sense of ego separation starts to
Yeah,
dissolve and their sense of collective joy or communal joy starts to arise.
nice.
There's also there's risk in that in terms
Yeah.
of behavior
Have you
with
experienced that?
in terms of the risk piece of it.
Yeah.
Yes, when a rabid crowd that's very excited starts to shift in the direction of something that they're angry about.
Yeah.
Uh, and that can be a little weird.
Yeah.
It happened on the dance floor once, a long time ago. But what I would just
Yeah.
say, uh, um, I have a quick story about moral beauty.
Yeah.
So there's a woman named Maria Shriver who
Yeah.
mo most of us have heard of, and um, I knew, of course, of her because she's famous, and she had known a little bit about me and MEA. And a couple years ago, she and Hoda Kotb, who has just is stepping down from being a Today Show host, were in Cabo, and MEA's campus is an hour north of that. And out of the blue, I got this text from both of them separately. And Maria and I had texted before, so that was not a surprise. But I'd never texted with Hoda before. Didn't know she had my phone number, and I really didn't know her very well. And they said, "Will you come down to Cabo? We're doing a retreat down here, and we've got the afternoon off, and we just want to hang out with you for a little while." I was like, "Okay." I had some time. I went down to Cabo, spent what I thought I was going to be there like 45 minutes to an hour, spent 3 hours with them. And what I heard from Maria in that conversation was just the three of us. Um, Maria was talking about how much she wants to do in the world. And I think she's maybe 70 years old now. And
Yeah.
she's single. And of course, she had a rather traumatic relationship with Arnold Schwarzenegger, her husband. And so what I heard her saying was how much she wanted to do for the world, but I also heard a loneliness in
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
a sense of like, you know what, it's really hard to find a man. And of course, I'm a gay man, and I'm, a few years younger than her. And she was like, how can I turn you around? But I said, like, not available there for that. And she was joking, but she, as I was about to leave, I just looked at her and I felt her deep sense of giving and
Yeah.
service,
Yeah.
and how much she deserved to feel love.
Yeah.
And I said to her, the one thing you need to know, Maria, that I want you to remember the rest of your life, is that you are a moral beauty.
Mm.
Oh,
Oh.
she started bawling.
Oh.
Hoda.
That's amazing.
Oh my God. And then I told her about you, and I told her about the book. And this is right as the book was about to come out. And I just was like, okay. So she and I
That's
have
amazing.
this little secret thing where, if I ask her, how you doing today, Moral Beauty? Um, yeah.
But
Um,
there's a deep point in this, which is, and it's interesting, moral beauty, sorry, it was written about by David Hume in the 18th century, who was influenced by Buddhism in a really interesting way, which really thinks of the mind in more morally beautiful ways, all of our compassionate tendencies. And then we forgot about it, and the world got obsessed with physical beauty and, you know, and material beauty and Gucci bags and so forth. And we really have the concept of moral beauty has it needs some propping up, It's why Maria Shriver, a famous person, is weeping when you tell her that she's a moral beauty because it's so fresh and she needs to know. And a lot of people need to hear those words.
yeah, yeah. So we're going to go to questions in a couple minutes. So in order for people to go ahead and raise your hand, what you need to do is go to the heart down below, react, and you'll see down there's a raise hand function. Go ahead and raise your hand. I will tell you, people tend to wait too long to raise their hand, and
Get
so
in now.
get in now. Exactly. Even if you don't know what question you're going to ask, get in now. And then if you don't know what you're going to ask, please drop off before we come to you. But last question for you is something
Yeah,
I like to say. Oh, well, we're having a lot of people get in there. Good. Dacher, you live part-time within walking distance of
I
MEA's
do. I do.
in Baja. So what I want to say to you is the following. I love the fact that I can say on occasion, don't, and please, don't say you're not this person. This guy Dacher, he's the world's leading expert on awe, and he lives within walking distance of MEA. So you know you're living in the right place if you're living near the person who's most sees awe in the world. What was it that attracted you to Pescadero in the first place?
Man.
Or not even what attracted you. What is it that led you to buy
Yeah.
a home there?
And people need to know, I have a life in Baja thanks to Chip, because I was raised in the counterculture and grew up in a VW bus and hit the road. And since the 60s, Jack Kerouac ends up on the road in Mexico, and Timothy Leary goes to Mexico, and it was just in the air, And so I was born in Mexico before Jack, or right after Jack Kerouac, and I had long wanted to go to Baja and do the trip, right, the drive down, and then one vacation, I brought a friend, Paul Piff, and I'm drawn to Baja because it's Mexico. I love the surf culture. I grew up around it, surfed a little, just the reverence for the ocean. I love the hippie culture. Baja has a lot of hippies, for better and for worse. And then Pescadero. When you drive in and you're like, oh yeah, this is Baja, it's dry, and then all of a sudden the aquifer and the farms and the pepper plants and the mountains and the water. I was just like, and the whales. I was like, wow, this is a spot. And then I found you by accident, and you drove me around, and you're like, Dacher, you're like, I know you're a professor, you have a decent salary, but you got to do it now, because this is a special place. And I was like, I'm in, and so it's been, I wrote a lot of awe at in Baja, and it is the mixture of kind of surf, hippie, spectacular beauty, sound of ocean. It just speaks to me. We're doing a lot of research right now on home, the sense of home, which is really interesting. It's hard to find home, and when I go to Baja, I feel at home.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You're
Especially
my
when
neighbor.
especially when I'm here in Miami and it doesn't feel like home to me. Let's go. We're gonna do very brief, since we have so many people raise their hand. David Weaver from Vermont, a place full of awe. Give us a short question or comment, and then we'll have a brief response from Dacher so we can get to so many people. Go,
Awesome.
David.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Dacher, thrilled to be talking to you. Little bit of a controversial question. I have been wondering about how we talk about awe in its bigness versus the way you talk about everyday awe, which I love. And my question really has to do with, is the way we talk about awe in our kind of bigness, our counterculturalness, at times our liberalness, our whiteness, are we accidentally causing awe inequality?
No, I was worried about that too. We did a study, nationally represented, actually Paul Piff did. Privileged white people are not more likely to feel awe. So that's good news, right? It's not just for the privileged, it's available to all. And then I would say that the great sources of awe are all around us, right? A grandmother's kindness, 360 million visits to the national parks, which transcends ideology. So, and part of my work now is to try to potentiate awe in a lot of the places that are truly democratic, that are open to everybody, right? Like museums and parks and the like. So I was very worried about that. I think the way one realm of discourse talks about awe, hop on an influencer, taking 6 months off to drive a VW bus around New Zealand, a working person isn't going to identify with a middle class person like me, so yeah, we got to make sure it's available to all, and it is empirically, it is very robustly so.
Got it. Beautiful. Thank you. Let's go to Lydia. Brief question. And obviously, Lydia, you were in a workshop with Dacher in the past.
Hey, Lydia.
Okay. Hi, Singapore today. I am obsessed with the idea that we co-regulate when we're together. And I'm trying to put together a Templeton Foundation grant proposal to study why we need to go to work together at
Yeah.
least some of the time. Is anyone doing anything about this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of work on, you're on to something important, just like shared consciousness, shared physiology, shared contemplation, shared awareness. And there's a lot of great new work at every level of analysis on how we're meant to share rhythms and brain patterns and ideas about the world. And I think you're right, in some sense, sociologically, that the great travesty of Zoom work and Zoom education is people aren't sitting next to each other thinking together. So I wish you the best of luck for your proposal.
Thank you, Lydia. Lydia, it was great to see you in the workshop recently. Angie from Idaho, what's up?
Hi, Dacher.
Hey, Angie.
I just wanted to say, for anybody considering going, definitely go. I got to meet Dacher last December. It was amazing. And you encouraged me to write my book, and it has started. And he even told me to get over my own ego, because me thinking that nobody would want to hear my story was an ego thing. And so I appreciate that. I needed to hear that. And you're just a moral beauty. So if anybody gets the opportunity to go see Dacher.
I hope I see you there, Angie. I loved our time together.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
I'm gonna come this year because I'm a grandma, and that was awe in itself. And
Yes.
I get to be there, but I'll be back to see you in Baja for sure.
Nice. I look forward to it, Angie.
Great to see you, Angie. Tell Rob hi. Let's go to Mary.
Hi, Dacher, Chip. So nice to meet you. My first time here.
Hey, Mary.
Dacher, have read your book, love it. I am so passionate about sharing this idea that we need awe, all of it, every day. So my question is, where do you see the greatest opportunities to share this message? Who is hungry for it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say number one is the most impacted by the COVID and our age of anxiety, which is teenagers. Teenage years are meant to be awe-inspiring, and somehow they're not feeling it. It's striking. And then, if I were you, I would be thinking about, as Chip has with Mia, which is like, where are the spots of leverage where work could be awe-inspiring, but it isn't. And so, like, I've worked for 25 years with healthcare providers. Healthcare is awesome when you get a chance to reflect on it, but they don't feel it. And so I'm constantly bringing the tools that will be part of the workshop into that. So that'd be another. And then I really like the idea of, and this comes out of collective effervescence and like, it's like public spaces. Like if you have a chance, I'm doing a lot of work right now with museums in cities. Like, how do you get people in a city to realize this is incredible? So I think there's a lot of good work to do.
Great, thanks for the suggestions.
All right, Jane in Oakland.
Hi, Chip. Hi, Dacher. Just ran around Lake Merritt near your other home. Preparation for the call. There's a lot of divisiveness, as we all know. So speaking of leverage, are there any particular acts of resistance or activism or groups or ways in which you will use your background in awe, besides the Center for Greater Good, to get engaged in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about moral beauty, and then this is just factually true. When you look at the words that were said on the campaign, it was ugly, and it just assaulted a lot of people's minds. I have students, one of my prize graduate students, her mom is undocumented. She's a first generation Mexican grad student. She's scared to death. So, yeah, I think you pick your cause, you get involved. What I personally am very interested in, and if people want to, if you happen to be is public spaces. Yeah, I was very influenced by a book called Palaces for the People. And America has these incredible public spaces, public parks, regional parks, public libraries, museums, 360 million visits to the national parks. To me, these are in some sense non-ideological, and we can seed progressive feeling and expansive humanistic feeling in those spaces, which I'm working on as a way for social change. And they will be threatened in the next 4 years. So, to me, that's a big one, is to just think about where do we all come together. It's interesting. I work with a Gale architecture firm. All of you should check it out, GEHL, located in Copenhagen. A lot of countries are way ahead of us in terms of public life. Mexico's way ahead of us in public life. There's no comparison to a Zocalo in Mexico. And we got good work to do, so think about public life. And what you can give to it. And there's a lot to do, farmers markets, et cetera. So that's what I'm doing.
Great.
That's my
Thanks.
resistance.
Thank you. Joelle.
Hi, I'm a PhD student in clinical psychology, and I'm studying
Good.
as it might connect to anxiety. So your work
Yes.
is hugely influential to me. So it's exciting to speak with you. I'm wondering if you think that certain experiences like chronic worry or anxiety might make it more difficult for people to access awe, and what you think about that potential relationship.
Yeah, fundamental question. And please keep me updated on your research, right? One way to answer that question is just to take the neurophysiology of awe, right? Which I write about in the book, elevated vagus nerve activation, increased oxytocin release, reduced default mode network activation, which is where rumination takes place, lower blood pressure, and it's the opposite of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So what it tells us is if your body is in fight or flight, amygdala, cortisol, et cetera, you just got a lot more work to do to get the awe. And then by contrast, if I can be in an awe state, I, end up feeling less anxiety, which we have documented in several studies. I come out of a very anxious genetic lineage, a little bit OCD, and awe quieted it all down, when I was a teenager, unbeknownst to me. So I'd be thinking about it like that. It's antithetical forces in your nervous system and mind, and then you want to activate the awe.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much.
Keep me posted.
Good luck with your studies. Terry.
Hi, Dacher.
Hi, Terry.
Hey, Chip. Thank you. Thank you for this session. Museum person here, art historian. I teach Asian art history to undergraduates, and it's a survey. India, China, and Japan. So, of course,
Nice.
I take Buddhism, through the countries. That's a good constant. And I didn't intend to do an intervention, but I did. And I realized it years later. I did away with a traditional art history paper because of plagiarism. I didn't want to be bogged down with that. And I said, I just want an essay. And these essays that came back from these students were mind-blowing. I thought, wow, they're good writers.
Yeah.
So I have like a 25-year collection of the essays.
Wow.
And it's not about good writing. They're having experiences of awe.
Yeah.
And so, I just wanted to analyze that. That's been my life's work now, thanks to my students. But, they recognize.
Terry, I'm gonna for brevity, because of more people, could you just maybe give us another couple sentences or ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No, I understand. I want to give everyone a chance. So you're writing about spirituality, and just one other thing I wanted to say is these students recognize transcendence.
Yeah.
That's what I have documented. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And we are there's a lot of, we're working with the National Gallery. There's a lot of work on art potentiating our sense of the vastness of awe and how good it is for us. And so there's mounting work on that, which is really exciting. So you anticipated something.
Thank you, Terry. Where do you live, Terry?
I'm in New Jersey, USA.
Beautiful. All right. The Garden State. Thank you. Jim in New York.
Yes, Dacher, thank you for the book. It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Chip touched on something a moment ago. Yes, I have experienced moral beauty recently and I'm always madly, wildly touched by it. But can you also not feel a sense of awe? This gets on a very personal basis, not mine, not at age 89, of the effect of someone, of a one human being's emotion for another human being, of falling in love, or
Yeah.
the surprise of the magnetic attraction of something that you don't expect.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I write about this in the book. There's nice work by this lab in Israel. The merging early in life is eye-to-eye contact, dissolving self that Chip talked about earlier, oxytocin, synchronized physiology is the physiological platform of awe, right? Of losing self. And we now know that. And so when you are falling in love with somebody, you'll suddenly like, whoa, where did my sense of self go in time? And it's a source of awe, as some people have talked about. I even think, certain witnessing it as well becomes a source of moral beauty.
I mean,
yeah.
right. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Really good idea.
Thank you. Sarah on the road. Sarah's going out and just looking at awe on the street while she's doing this.
I get tired of being on Zoom all the time in a chair, and so I'm often outside. I'd like your thoughts on loneliness, which has been appearing to rise along with the US's negative perspective on the world.
Yep.
How do they relate? Are they?
Yeah.
How is it a consequence of, or is it just a neighbor issue to the lack of awe?
Yeah, I have a student who's working on that, and I think one of the preconditions of a lot of awe experiences, especially as we've been talking about today, of collective sharing and losing the ego isolation that Chip referred to, is being with others, praying with others, singing with others, dancing with others, looking at art with others, looking at the sky with others. And that has been compromised in our culture and given rise to loneliness, which is epidemic. And they are, much like anxiety, loneliness is almost an antimatter of awe. And so one of the findings I love is when we study people going out into nature by themselves, they feel more connected to others through awe. And that awe activates this structure in your mind of like, I'm part of a community. And so, yeah, I think one of our central aims right now is to rely on awe to reduce loneliness, which is really tough these days.
Beautiful. Thank you. Stephanie.
Hi there. Thank you. This has been so interesting. This is my first webinar, and I am excited to read your book. I teach a course at the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business to Executive Worldwide, and Mindful Leadership. I created the course, and it lines up with my book. And I really try to get them balanced in terms of mindfulness, and I don't talk about all, but I'd love to weave more of this in.
Yeah.
And a big part of what I do, my background was in branding. And so purpose is a big part of it. And I know Marty Seligman's PERMA framework, meaning and purpose are like the top of flourishing. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit, if there's research on, when I look at people living their purpose, maybe that's moral beauty. This is a new term for me, but there's something just magical about that and how they light up the world, what Chip's done with MEA, what people do when they're really living into their purpose. And so I'd love to, if you could talk a little bit about how that works. And then I'd love to be able to bring this more into the workplace and any and nuggets you have around how to do that, because they're not going to buy all, but they'll buy all the benefits. It's probably about tying the research in. Yeah.
Yeah, there was work that came out, this is a time where it's hard to find purpose and meaning, the sense that your life matters, your work matters, you're doing good. And there's nice work from China showing reflections on awe bring a greater sense of purpose to our work. Nice work by Diesner and Poling on the same thing in the US. Like reflecting on awe once a day kind of makes our work feel more energized and inspired. So very good news. And then, yeah, a lot of people are starting to apply it to workplaces and check out Greater Good in Action, which is meant to allow people to try these practices at work. And there's a lot going on. So it's happening.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Stephanie. Eileen, we will not get to you, but Shadi, we will get to you as our last question.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. My first interactions and meetings with your work, which I so appreciate. My question is, we've talked a lot about external triggers for awe. I'm just wondering about internal and actually activating those various neurochemicals and so forth internally without having to go out or be with other people. Could you talk a little bit to that and its level of effectiveness compared to, say, nature or something along those lines?
Yeah, what a terrific question. I always push the get out with other people, get out in nature because of direct experience. I think our culture has lost a lot of direct experience in our shift to life on screens, 6 to 8 hours a day. But I am really interested in the more internal sources of awe for practical reasons. One is music, just sitting and listening to Spotify, the right piece of music for a minute or two, you can feel awe and enjoy its benefits. Another is imagery. Again, we can find so much incredible imagery as an internal experience. I'm very interested in memory. One of the practices that I'll probably teach at the workshop is like thinking of a place in nature, calling it up in your mind as imagery that's sacred to you, that gives you awe, and just like you start to think about its significance and smells and colors, and that can bring us awe. So yeah, I'm I want more awe in whatever way we can get there.
What about imagination?
Yeah, absolutely. Imagining dystopian universes, or it's absolutely part of awe. We just published a cool paper on the imagination with Efti Histamku, so you should check it out. So yeah, I love the imagination as a place of awe.
Thank you so much.
Shadi, we
Thank
hope
you.
to see
Great questions.
at MEA one of these days, Shadi.
I would love that.
Yes. So we have finished. It's an hour. That was like so much a lot of dark chocolate all eating at once. Thank you so much, Dacher. I love you, and you are
I love you too, Chip.
in the community. Dacher has been teaching at MEA since our very first year, and has just been a big supporter. So we feel very lucky to have you in our life.
And vice versa.
Pass it to you.
Thank you. Wow. What a great conversation. Dacher and Chip, you took us right to the top of the hour. Everybody, you will get a recording of this email to you, and it will be on our website as of tomorrow. I popped into the playlist. Dacher made a playlist with Jeff Hamui called Incontrovertibly Happy. And this is the top song that I'm going to take you out with, Daryl Hall and John Oates. Thank you for coming, everybody.